Most men spend a lifetime trying to figure out what women want. They read books, watch endless videos, and change their looks, their style, even their voice, all in the hopes of being seen, heard, chosen. But what if I told you that sometimes it's not about changing who you are, but about saying just one powerful thing, one sentence, that flips the script entirely, and suddenly she's the one chasing you. Of course, here is Keynote 1 expanded into approximately 600 words, continuing in the Jessica Opare tone, deep, reflective, and emotionally resonant. As requested, it flows without ending sentences or headings. When you say, "I like you," something subtle but powerful happens in the dynamic between you and her, because most men are afraid to express interest directly, thinking it will make them look weak or desperate. But what they don't realize is that women admire clarity. They respond to men who can own their feelings without shame or hesitation, because it communicates courage, maturity, and certainty, traits that are incredibly attractive on a primal level. And in a world where people are constantly playing games and hiding behind fear, a man who can simply say, "I like you," with calm confidence is rare. And in that rarity lies his strength. Not because he's begging for her affection, but because he is comfortable enough in himself to share his desire without needing a specific reaction in return. And this is where the energy matters more than the words themselves, because it's not just about the sentence. It's about the posture behind it, the emotional weightlessness, the lack of neediness. And when you approach her with that grounded energy, you're not saying, "Like me back." You're saying, "This is where I stand, and I'm okay whether you choose to stand here with me or not." And that kind of emotional security is magnetic. It draws her in, not because she's being manipulated, but because you've created a space where she can feel safe, intrigued, and even a little challenged, because most women have experienced one of two extremes. Either the man who hides his feelings and keeps her guessing, which creates confusion and mistrust, or the man who over-pursues and smothers her, which creates pressure and resistance. But you're doing neither. You're just being real. And realness has a way of cutting through all the noise, making her pause, making her feel seen in a different way. And that's when curiosity kicks in, because now she's wondering, who is this man who doesn't play games, who isn't afraid to be honest, but also doesn't cling? And that wonder turns into attraction, because emotional balance is rare, and a woman instinctively knows when she's in the presence of someone who's emotionally self-contained, and that's when the shift begins. Because now the power dynamic isn't tilted one way or the other. You're both centered, both curious, and that's the beginning of a genuine connection. One built not on performance or pretense, but on authenticity. And the beautiful thing about saying, "I like you," is that it sets the stage for her to choose you back from a place of respect, not pity, not guilt, not obligation, because you didn't pressure her, you didn't demand anything, you simply revealed a truth that left her space to respond, and whether she does or not is not the point. The point is that you spoke from alignment with your inner value, and when you operate from that alignment, your words have a different frequency. They resonate deeper. They touch something more than just her ears. They echo inside her, and sometimes, long after the words have been spoken, they continue to live inside her mind, making her remember you, making her think about the way you made her feel, safe, respected, desired, without being objectified, appreciated without being pressured. And in a world where many men try to force desire or manipulate affection, your calm clarity will stand out like silence in a noisy room. And when that clarity is paired with quiet confidence, she feels drawn toward you, not because she has to be, but because she wants to be. Because you've said the one thing that few men dare to say, and you've said it in a way that gives her freedom rather than fear. And that changes everything, because attraction rooted in emotional truth always runs deeper than attraction built on surface games. And now, without even chasing, without pushing or performing. You've planted a seed in her mind that will grow in ways you can't always predict, because women remember how you made them feel, and your honesty, your stillness, your self-worth, it leaves an imprint, one that doesn't fade easily, even when the conversation ends. When you say, "But I don't need you," it's not rejection, it's not coldness, and it's definitely not arrogance. It's a declaration of inner wholeness. And that is the most powerful place any man can operate from, because when a woman hears those words and feels the truth behind them, she understands immediately that she's dealing with a man who is not trying to fill a void, not chasing love out of loneliness, not using her attention as a crutch for self-worth. And that changes the entire dynamic, because now the pressure is gone, the emotional weight is lifted, and the interaction becomes light, magnetic, and more compelling, because she knows you want her, but you don't depend on her. And that, more than anything, makes you incredibly attractive. Not because you've tricked her, but because you've created emotional safety through detachment. And that kind of detachment doesn't mean you're disconnected or uninterested. It means you're not defined by her approval or disapproval. You're not building your identity around whether she stays or leaves. You're centered in your own world, in your own value, in your own path. And when a woman sees a man like that, calm, grounded, emotionally self-contained, it triggers something deep inside her. A respect that's different from admiration, a fascination that's different from lust, a curiosity that keeps pulling her in, because she's used to men who fall apart when they don't get a text back, who lose their sense of purpose when they're rejected, who over-pursue and try to prove their worth, and then here you are, offering honesty without expectation, affection without attachment, and that, to her, is something rare, something worth noticing, something she wants to understand more, and now the tables start to turn, because without even trying, you've become the one she thinks about, the one who stands out, the one who didn't beg or plead or chase or beg. And the power in all of this lies in the paradox. By not needing her, you actually make her want to be closer. By not trying too hard, you give her room to lean in. And this is not about strategy, it's about truth. Because every time you interact with her from that grounded space of self-respect, you're showing her that your happiness is not for sale, your peace is not negotiable, and your value is not waiting for someone else to recognize it, and that is the kind of man a woman can't ignore. Not because you've put her on a pedestal, but because you haven't. Because you see her clearly, but you also see yourself clearly. And that balance is rare. And rare things are valuable, and valuable things are chased. And that's the moment when you stop worrying about how she feels about you and start asking how you feel about the way she fits into your life. Because now you're operating from abundance, not lack. From clarity, not confusion. And when you say, "I don't need you," it means you're open to love, open to connection, but not at the cost of your dignity, not at the cost of your peace, not at the cost of your identity. And women can feel that difference. They can feel when your words come from self-possession instead of insecurity, when your presence feels like a gift, not a demand. And that's when they begin to value you more than the ones who tried too hard, who gave too much, who said yes to everything hoping to be chosen, because your refusal to need her forces her to ask herself why she wants you. And that question echoes louder than any line you could ever say, because now she's chasing, not because you played her, but because you showed her what it looks like to be truly complete on your own. And that completeness is what makes you unforgettable. When you live in alignment with the words, "I like you, but I don't need you," your actions begin to reflect that emotional freedom in every interaction, because now you're not just saying it, you're becoming it. And when a man lives that truth, everything about him changes. The way he carries himself, the way he responds to texts, the way he holds space in conversations, and especially the way he reacts when things don't go his way. Because now You're not waiting around wondering if she's going to choose you. You're not checking your phone every few minutes hoping for her reply. You're not rearranging your priorities to prove that you're worthy of her time. You're just living, breathing, and moving from a place of self-value. And that kind of energy doesn't go unnoticed. Because women are incredibly intuitive. They can feel when a man is silently begging for attention, just as they can feel when he's comfortable in silence. And when your life is full of purpose, full of passion, full of personal standards, it becomes very clear to her that you are not looking for someone to rescue you from your loneliness or validate your identity. You are looking for someone who adds to what you've already built. And that changes everything, because now, instead of chasing or convincing, you're filtering. You're observing. You're noticing how she shows up, how she contributes to your peace or disrupts it. And when she sees that you're not afraid to walk away from what doesn't align, even if it's beautiful, even if it's tempting, even if it once felt exciting, she begins to understand that you are not like the rest, because your boundaries are not threats, they're standards. Your silence is not passive-aggressive, it's intentional. And your time is not given freely to anyone who looks good or says the right things. It's earned. And in a world where many women are used to being pursued simply because they exist, your restraint makes her pause, makes her reflect, makes her curious about why you're not chasing like the others. And that curiosity becomes your magnetism, not because you're withholding love, but because you're not offering it at the expense of your truth. And now she begins to see you differently. Not just as a potential partner, but as a man of depth, a man of discipline, a man who knows himself so well that nothing and no one can shake him out of alignment. And that's what makes her chase. Not your compliments, not your gifts, not your sweet words, but your consistency in who you are, with or without her presence. Because when a woman sees that your emotions don't swing depending on her responses, that your peace remains untouched even when she pulls away or tests your limits, she knows you're different. And being different is what makes you desirable, because now you're not the man begging to be chosen, you're the man calmly choosing. And that makes her wonder what it would take to be part of your world, to earn your attention, to be close to the fire without trying to control it. And that is what makes her chase, not because she's being tricked, but because she's drawn to your strength, to your energy, to your calm detachment that says, I like you, but I will be fine without you. And the moment she feels that, she begins to shift, begins to show up differently, because she now sees you as the man who stands alone, not lonely but full, not desperate but discerning, not cold but clear. And that clarity is what she will crave again and again, because deep down, every woman wants to feel safe in the presence of a man who knows exactly who he is, without needing anyone else to remind him of it. When you match her energy, instead of overextending yourself to win her over, you shift from being the pursuer to being the man who recognizes his value and expects mutual effort. Because too often men give too much too soon, thinking that the more they do, the more they'll be appreciated. But in reality, giving without reciprocation only teaches her that your time, your presence, and your affection come at no cost, and anything given without boundaries eventually becomes invisible. It becomes expected. It loses its weight. So when you slow down and begin to observe how she moves, how she reaches out, how she engages, how she invests, and you respond in kind without rushing to prove your worth, you instantly shift the balance back to one of respect and equality, because attraction grows in the space between effort and reward. And when you give her space to meet you halfway, you're inviting her to actively choose you, not passively receive you. And that choice makes all the difference, because people value what they invest in, and that includes emotional energy. So when she texts, you text. When she shares, you listen and you share back. But you don't overexpose your heart before she's even earned a seat at your table. And this doesn't mean being cold or withholding. It means being intentional, It means honoring your time and your presence just as much as you're willing to honor hers. And when a woman sees that you are not jumping through hoops for someone who's not matching your energy, it signals confidence, it signals self-respect, and it creates a challenge that inspires her to step up, not because she's being manipulated, but because she wants to be seen by you as worthy of more. And when your standards are communicated through your actions, you no longer need to explain your value. She experiences it. She feels it. In the way you don't chase validation, in the way you take your time, in the way you respond when effort is not mutual, and when you pull back respectfully, when you create distance without bitterness, when you give her the opportunity to miss your presence rather than forcing it upon her, she begins to feel your absence in ways that words can't explain, because your silence becomes a mirror. And in that mirror, she begins to ask herself questions. She begins to reflect on why she didn't value your consistency, why she didn't meet your warmth with the same energy, and that reflection is often what sparks change. Not arguments, not explanations, but distance, created with grace. And now you're no longer the man who gave too much too fast. You're the man who gave with awareness, who watched, who measured, who remained calm in the face of imbalance, and that calmness becomes your power. Because it tells her you don't seek love through performance, you seek love through resonance. And that kind of energy is rare. That kind of discernment is deeply attractive. Because it tells her you're not looking for just any connection. You're looking for the right one that aligns, one that flows both ways, one where your effort is met with appreciation and not entitlement. And that standard becomes magnetic, not just to her, but to any woman who encounters your presence, because now your attention is no longer something you give away, it's something people earn. And that shift alone can make the difference between constantly chasing and being chased by someone who finally realizes that your energy is a gift, not a given. And that realization often begins the moment you stop doing too much and start allowing her to meet you where you are without pushing her to get there. So the next time you find yourself caught between saying too much or saying nothing at all, remember this. Confidence is quiet, but it speaks volume. You don't need tricks, games, or manipulation. You just need truth. A calm, grounded, powerful truth. Because when you say it and you mean it, she'll feel it. And she'll chase not because you forced her to, but because she couldn't ignore the man who finally understood what real attraction is made of.